Hi, I'm Nicole Gagner. I am a teaching artist, and I am here in my studio again today to show you a fun little project that you can do, whether it's sunny outside or not. It's actually a great project to take advantage of sunny days because we are actually making our very own window cling. So when you put them on your window, they end up kind of looking like their own little stained glass, especially when the light is streaming through. So the things you'll need to collect to do this project, project, not product, weird mess up. You're gonna need some white glue. Any kind of white glue is fine. I am using, I think it's from the dollar store, maybe the dollar bin at the grocery store, I don't know where. Just any kind of white glue will work. The cheaper the better because you want to use a lot of it. And then some kind of acrylic paint or craft paint, nothing water-based. So watercolor would thin out your glue kind of too much. It might work. You could try it, but just know that I've only tested it with acrylic paint and craft paint. And then you are going to need some little cups, something you don't care a lot about that you can mix up paint and glue in. You can see I mixed up a little bit too much of some of these, so I just covered them with saran wrap. So if you happen to have like old Tupperware or something that have a lid, even better. But if not, you can just saran wrap them and save them for later. And then some brushes that you don't care about. You can wash them out when you're done and still use them for painting. That'll be fine. But for this, it's kind of nice just to have junky old brushes. And then if you have it, one thing that can be extra nice is a little squeeze bottle. You don't need this for all of your colors, but if you want that nice thick line to look like stained glass, it can be nice to at least have your black in it. And once we get started, you'll realize the thicker your paint is, the better. It'll help it cling together. If you have any thin spots in your window cling, it can tear holes in it. So you want to be able to squeeze it on nice and thick. That's a little bit harder to do with a brush. So the more squeeze bottles you have, the better. If you have old glue bottles that you could turn into paint dispensers, that would be great. Something too big, like a ketchup bottle or something that might be a little bit more paint, then you want to dedicate to this. But if you have little extra ones or find them for cheap somewhere, that would be perfect. And then the last thing you're going to need is some kind of plastic. Again, you want this to be something that you don't care too much about, or it's disposable. I've used Ziploc bags for this. That works really well. You could also saran wrap like a plate or something, just so that the plastic stays nice and tight, because if it waves up too much, your glue can kind of puddle and that can cause problems down the road. So I'll give you a second to gather all of your supplies. If you have any questions about any of this process as you go along, or if those supplies flew past you a little bit too fast, then feel free to grab the document that I wrote for this, that it kind of goes over just the basics of what you'll need. So if you're a little bit more of a reading learner than a visual learner, you can get that too. So get all those supplies together, and then I will show you what's going on my desk. Oh, one more thing before we go down to see what's going on my desk. You will probably want some kind of scratch paper to either pre-sketch out your idea on, or even some picture to trace, like coloring books can be great for this. You can follow the outline. If you're having problems tracing your image, if your paper is a little bit too thick to see what you're trying to trace underneath, you can always hold it up to a window or even put a little piece of tape on it, and the light coming through the window will help you be able to see what you're tracing. So this is just a very window sunny project today. So grab those also, and now we will look down at what I have going on my desk. Okay, so you can see this was one of my window clings. I'll show you how you can stick it on the window later, but I'll just set that aside for now. I'm going to set aside all of my paint for now. I'll show you how to mix those in just a second. Don't quite need my Ziploc yet either. The first thing I'm going to show you how to do is, like I said, if you want to trace a picture that you already have, that can totally work great for this. If you would like to design your own and you want it to be symmetrical, so symmetrical means it's going to be the same on both halves, then a fun, easy way to do that is take a piece of whatever your drawing paper is going to be that day, fold it in half, and then we're just going to draw what one half of this is going to be right now. So I know that I want to do a heart. I'm kind of leaning into that whole heart, your walk, world of hearts thing. But if you have a different idea in mind, that's great too. This works for any design really. Anything that you want to be symmetrical along one line, this will work for that. So this is my half of my heart, and let's say maybe I want some swirls in here. So this design eventually I will put underneath my plastic so that I can go over the top of it and trace it. But for right now, I'm just developing my one half of this. Maybe I'll put some little dots in here or something. Now, if I had just free-handed this whole thing and my heart wasn't perfectly symmetrical, that's totally fine too. I think this original one that I did here is not symmetrical. It's a little bit uneven and it still looks fine. But if you really, really want your design to be symmetrical, what you can do, and I drew this using a Sharpie just so that it was a little bit easier to see. You don't have to use a Sharpie. You can use pen or pencil, whatever you have. And then when I fold it the other way, now I can see it here. But just keep in mind, you'll have to trace it a third time, because once you fold it, once you trace it here, now you'll be able to see it through. And then you'll have to trace it one more time probably. Unless if let's see. I'll trace a few more of my lines. If you use a dark marker like I did, you might be able to see through. So let's see. If you can't see through, then you'll just trace it one more time on the other side. But let's see here. So once I've traced all of these lines, I'm going pretty quickly here, but you can take your time and really go as slow as you need. So I can actually see through, but say you had done this in pencil and it was just really light here, you could retrace it so that you could see it well. And then what you'll do once you're ready to start painting is put your plastic over it. You might want to take some masking tape or something like that and tape it down, just so that if your bag wants to pull up, that you won't have any issues with that. So once you've got your design ready to go, you can set that aside. The next thing you'll want to do is mix up your glue and your paint. So like I said, I'm using just a cheap, regular, all-purpose glue. It says in here, compare to Elmer glue, so obviously off-brand is fine. And then just any cup to mix it up in. And the ratio here doesn't have to be perfect. Unlike some of the other art recipes I've shared, it's pretty go at your own pace. The more of the glue that you add, the more translucent it will be, because the glue dries pretty transparent. So if you don't put enough glue in, it might not be very transparent at all. So I would say probably aim for about 2/3 glue to 1/3 of your acrylic paint. So I will just grab a little bit more of my blue paint here that I was using. And it does not have to be, this is not an exact science. So I put a little squirt more. I'm just adding here, but if you were starting from scratch, you just put that in there. I'm gonna take my lid off because I want to make sure that I have enough. And this is why I'm not advocating using an expensive glue, because I want a nice big glug of it, and then just use a stick or a paintbrush to mix it up. Okay, and you'll want to do this for all of your colors. So depending on how many colors you have, what exactly kind of pattern you want. I mixed up, let's see, 2 shades of blue here, a red, a green, and then I mixed up a black that I transferred into a squirt bottle. Really, it's up to you how many you want to do. If you have any spots that you want to leave transparent, like you can see I left, I wanted that to be clear so that you could see through. That would just be plain glue with no paint. If I left some of these holes in between here, uncovered with any paint or glue, those would want to break apart in the end. Any thin spots or open spots will make your finished project not quite as stable. So what I'm going to start doing now, and if you didn't want to draw something underneath, you just want to freehand it, that's totally fine too. Just remember, eventually this is all going to need to be covered in. So I'm going to start tracing my original drawing here, and I don't want this to be too thin. So if you have a really thin tipped squeeze bottle like I do, you might have to come back and make it a little bit thicker like I'm doing, like retrace along it. Because you'll notice with the white glue mixture, it kind of wants to bead up if you don't quite get it thick enough. So just kind of play around with it. Know that, there's no one perfect way to do this. So you have to play around with it and try it out a little bit. That's totally fine. Trial and error is kind of part of the artistic process. It's not a failure if you learned something. As long as you came away from it with a little bit more knowledge and maybe some ideas of how to do things differently next time, then it's definitely a success. Okay, so I will go ahead and keep filling this in. Now, one thing you'll want to keep in mind, when you have any kind of wet paint, even our gluey painty mixture that we have here, if you put another wet paint next to it, like say I know that I want to make this line in here blue this time. If I started filling in with my brush, or if I had another squirt bottle or anything like that, and I put this wet blue paint right next to my wet black paint, they could start to mix together. Sometimes that technique can be used on purpose. It's called like mixing on the canvas or painting wet into wet. And that can be a lot of fun, but you just want to keep in mind, if you don't want those colors to mix, like in this case, if I want a nice crisp black line and I don't want any of my blue to mix into it, then I probably want to let this dry completely before I come back and add any of the other colors to it. So that's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to outline all of this in black, let it dry, and then I'll come back and add more colors into it. But again, if you want to kind of experiment, make this your own, do things a little bit different, I think that's part of the fun. And the really fun thing about these window clings, once they're all done, you can put them up in any window, take them down, move them around. So if you end up with a few more window clings than you necessarily need, that can be really fun. You could stick one on a friend's window or on a friend's car or something, and it'll peel off just fine, but it can be a nice little way to stick some color up around, so that can be really fun. So once you have your outline dry, you can see this is another one that I've got started here. I've got a whole bunch of little projects off to the side. If you want to do a couple extra little ones off to the side, that's something that's nice about having these household objects. You know, you can just grab another Ziploc bag to start a couple little ones, and then you can have different ones going at different times. You can also try different projects on the side. I've got some like stamping going here, all sorts of stuff. It's good to try all sorts of different creative things. But once your outline has dried here, that's when you can start filling in with other colors. So if you want to just go around the lines that you've drawn, that's one way you can do it, but you want to be careful. You don't want to leave any gaps like that there. You want to go all the way up to the edge. If you go right over the top, like I've done with this one here, the paint will dry semi-translucent, but you won't be able to see it quite as well on both sides. You'll be able to see the black when it shines through the window, but you might not be able to see it quite as well on one side as the other. But that's not the end of the world. It could be kind of nice to have maybe one side look a little bit more solid, or you could even go back and maybe add like polka dots or stripes or something on this so they look a little bit different on each side. Oh, this is a little bit wet, so I'll set that aside to finish drying. But if you want it to be the exact same on both sides, you could just carefully outline it here and just make sure it matches on both sides. Just make sure you don't leave any thinned out little gaps. But don't stress about it as you're doing it, because while you're painting here, you could always let it dry, see what it looks like, see if anything kind of beat it up, and you can always go back and fix any little empty spots there. You might also have a little bit better luck with a squeeze bottle application. Like if I'm going with just the clear glue here, it's going to dry completely clear, but if you have your paint mixture in a squeeze bottle application too, you can kind of outline it and then kind of fill in between where you outline. Just use kind of the tip of your squeeze bottle there to kind of push it around, or you could even grab like a toothpick or something like that to kind of push the paint around too. So you've got lots of options. Really, I think an important part about any time you try a new medium or a new project like this is just let yourself be experimental with it. Kind of let the paint medium tell you what it wants to do. And the more you kind of just play around with it, the more you'll get used to using it and figure out more tips and tricks. So play around with it, have fun. You could even do a little bit of mixing on your canvas. Like I said, when you put wet next to wet, those will kind of mix there. So if you want your colors to mix on you, you could put some wet colors next to some wet colors, and that could be fun. So really just get experimental with it. Let experimentation drive you. Don't feel like it has to come out exactly perfect, because you can always peel this off and stick it on a window and try again. So have fun with it. So I'll show you just how easy these are to stick up. This one got a little on the thin side, but I just sprayed it down with a little bit of water and it sticks on just fine there. I can peel it off and move it around if I want to. So this can be a lot of fun to be able to rearrange, kind of make it your own, and you can see it really kind of cheers up my my dirty window when the sun starts streaming through them. All right, and that is going to do it for me. I hope you had fun watching me make window clings, and I hope you try it yourself or try one of all of the other videos to help you get inspired while you're staying at home and kind of brighten things up, make things a little bit sunnier. I also did a video on washable window paint, washable chalk paint for your sidewalk. So lots of ways that you can get outside, get inspired, and just start making some art. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you to the South Dakota Council on the Arts for making this video possible. And from Bismarck, North Dakota, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.